Good afternoon, and I just want to thank everyone, Alan and Ken from the Stony Brook Film Festival, and all of you for coming out today. We're going to be having a great discussion today about the filmmaking process. We have a accomplished group of independent filmmakers here, and I'm very interested in hearing about how they made their movies. I've seen all of them, and hopefully all of you will go see their films as well. Let's start maybe with each of you giving the audience a little background information about what you've done in the film industry leading up to the making of your current film. Do you want to start first?
Hi, I'm Maya. I guess I always knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. When I was 9 years old, I set up a camcorder in my room and I would record myself, and I'm like, I know I want to do film. So in high school, I went to drama classes, and then university, I studied communications studies and video production. And then as soon as I was done my degree, I went to Vancouver, and I spent the last 15 years working in post-production. And 2 years, I guess it was a year and a half ago, was my first directorial debut of In God I Trust. So that's my first feature that I've directed.
So I also grew up knowing that I wanted to make films. My first film was, we didn't have a tripod, so I borrowed my parents' camcorder and put it on a stack of shoeboxes. And then I went with my friend in front of it. So my first film is actually the camera falling off and breaking. And it was in the shop for like 6 months. But after that, I moved out to LA in 2001. And since I've been out there, I've worked in web series. I've worked in television quite a bit. I was actually back here for a couple years. I worked on a series called Royal Pains that shot in Long Island. And then during hiatus from the TV shows I've worked on, I've produced 3 features. I've directed 2 of them, and then this movie I'm here with is the first one that I've written, produced, and directed all 3. So.
Yes, I think that for me also filmmaking, the bug kind of bit me at a young age. I think when I was in 5th grade, I went to an alternative school in Los Angeles, which meant that we sat on sofas in the classroom, and our teacher believed in aliens and would watch, and we would watch videos of unsolved mysteries about ghosts and things. And I think that kind of sparked the bug for me. I have a background in theater and acting, and kind of through this film segued more into filmmaking, but I have written and directed 2 short films. I do a lot of my filmmaking work with this guy who is my filmmaking partner and life partner as well. So A Scientist's Guide to Living and Dying, which we co-directed and I wrote, is our first fiction feature. But we've worked on other projects together, other short films, and also a series of short documentaries that we were commissioned to make. So one of them that I directed was about Gloria Steinem, and it featured an interview with Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Naomi Wolf, and Shachal can tell you more about the other short docs and other things that he's done.
Yeah. So I was meant to be a mathematician. I didn't want to make movies when I was young. But I ran away from Israel, I think, after the army, and I came to New York, and I fell in love with the buildings. And I stayed, and I thought, how can I affect the world? Like, what's the biggest thing to do to affect the world? And I said, oh, filmmaking, and I went to study filmmaking. And I became a cinematographer. I do a lot of things now. I direct, I do cinematography, I teach in colleges. I guess my biggest achievement was a documentary. It's called Alive Inside, and it won Sundance Film Festival, and I was the cinematography, and it's the effect of music on Alzheimer patients. It was like many people saw it, or at least the viral clip, and if you didn't, you should see it. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's good. What? Someone said, no. That's it, and we did, I wanted a child, so we made a film, and That's it. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Well, when all of you see their movies, you'll see that they're all very different types of movies. But the one common thing, I think, in all of your movies is that they all deal with some very difficult issues, some in a humorous way, some in a very serious way. I was wondering if you can, explain a little bit what your movies are about, but really get into some of the maybe more controversial issues that are raised in each of your movies and why you wanted to make a movie about that. Yes,
I go
sir.
first? Okay. My film, In God I Trust, follows 3 stories, and they all meet in a small little town in Idaho. And some of the main themes is racism, guns, and religion in the U.S. I know I'm Canadian, but we do live very close to each other. And I've experienced a lot of things in my life. Like Tom was saying, that I was born in Poland, and then my family we were refugees. We left Poland, and I lived in a refugee camp in Austria. And then after that, I moved to South Africa. So I have a very diverse background in, the world and a lot of the common things that goes on with topics like racism. And I wanted to make a movie, a character-driven story, and I felt like this was a lot of the topics that I've had happen to me in my life. Losing someone, very close to me. My sister got killed in a car accident when I was very young, and that's like one of the themes that happens. So I just felt like bringing all these stories together created a powerful movie.
You did it.
So I wanted to make a movie about the kind of process of deciding to have children. It was something that was part of my life. I had, both in a past relationship and in my current relationship, was a topic that came up quite often. And I think it's a bit different now than it probably was when my parents were deciding to have children. And now, there's a little bit more, question about career, and it's, when are we going to wait till later? And a lot of people do wait considerably later. I think, there's a statistic like in the west side of LA that like the average first child is like late 30s or something. I forget exactly what the age is, but it's incredible when you consider what it was probably like 30 or 40 years ago. But I kind of wanted to take all of my very personal fears and fragments of conversations and ideas about parenthood and try to put them into a comedic framework to kind of explore. And one thing that happened during that time was my wife became pregnant during prep of the film. So I had a very interesting perspective where I wrote this film as a non-parent. I prepped it and shot it as an expecting parent, and then I posted it as an actual parent. So it really was a great experience for me. And in terms of controversial elements, I do think there's a lot of topics regarding pregnancy that it was trying to find a line to make jokes about them, but also I think there's topics, whether it be miscarriage or abortion, that maybe don't traditionally fit into a comedy. But for me, I wanted to make something that was a little bit less of like a full-on comedy and have a little bit more of a drama element. So trying to not make a movie about pregnancy that ignored all of the sort of other aspects of it.
Yeah.
It's really funny how our films are kind of mirror images, but funhouse mirror images of each other. So, as Shachar was saying, he really wanted a baby. And as you were saying, in Los Angeles, which is the same in New York City.
I was the one that didn't want the baby.
I was the one that didn't want the baby. So there we are. So yes, in Los Angeles, it's same as New York City. It's like you wait until you're 40 to have a baby. So Shachar we have an age difference between us, and I'm younger, and I was like, I can't even think about having a baby right now. This is crazy. And it was a negotiation, and what we landed on is that if I get a feature film, then he gets a baby. So, it was, the pre-production process of me writing the script was me kind of wrestling with my own personal fears of becoming pregnant and becoming a mother. And for me, it didn't manifest as comedy, but rather as like a thriller, a psychological thriller, which is what our film is. And before really, usually when you're in pre-production and writing a script, something that takes quite a while, at least a year. And in our case, we got pregnant. And we were like, all right, we got to start production, because the idea of the film is that it is a story that takes place over 9 months, and we wanted to shoot it over my real-life pregnancy with me playing the pregnant woman in the film, which is what we did. So similarly, in our film, in kind of the pre-production, it's before we were pregnant, we shot while I was pregnant, and the post-production was once we were already parents. And also, I think part of the dread was that I was 27 when we got pregnant, which is like, that's an underage pregnancy in New York City. That's like almost illegal, I think. So there was a lot of, none of my friends had kids or anything like that. So it was very much going into this unknown, uncharted territory, which is what's reflected in the film, but more through magical realism, thriller, and I think that's one of the controversial things about it that has come up in Q&As. It's like, my character is wrestling with those fears herself, and so people be like, well, why is she so mean to the children, about my character, and why, because in Hollywood it's like a woman gets pregnant and she's happy about it, and, the whole process is kind of glossed over, and usually from a male perspective, and so I think that this kind of more complex view of that transition into motherhood, I think it is different than what people are used to.
Yeah, I wanted it. No, we work together as a couple. We work a lot together. People are like sometimes, amazed by that. But on everything we do, we have each other to check, and usually we collaborate when we can. And it's unfinished MFA in acting in Rutgers, and she was about to become an actress, and I wanted to take the thing that she has to offer to the world and change it, because you're pregnant. You're like, what do I need to do? I'm just there in the first second, and then she's carrying it for 9 months. So. So she said that we will do it, and then we got, well, I was against it, but then I was, okay, of course, let's do it, because that's the only way I'm going to be a father. And and we got into it like storytellers, meaning we had to it's not like a boring film about a couple that makes babies, because then, that's like life, and film is life in a skewed, dramatic way. So we made a film that will be that will have, interesting things in it, and we took the pregnancy as another step. So we used a real pregnancy for the film. So every month we filmed for 4 days, and it was easier to get all the crew to come for 4 days to our house. Our house was the set, and we went as she, or like as our boy grew up in the womb, and. Then the baby came out, and parenting first. So we kind of like didn't touch the film for 2 years, which is 2 years we didn't sleep too and did other stuff, right? And then we edited it, and then we reshaped it in a way, because we understood that what we thought wasn't what we intended to, and then we made reshoots. For a few months, I would say like maybe 25% of the film came 2 years after we finished it, and then we finished it, and yeah, it's not the film is not a premiere, but to the premiere we went with our 3-month-old second baby. So so that's our like 2 babies, 1 film. Which means 3 babies.
All right, so I had said that I wanted to talk about the process a little bit, but now that everyone understands that there are some controversial issues that are raised in all your movies, One of the first steps in making a movie is you have to get the funding, right? You have to raise the money. And I was wondering if each of you could maybe tell us a little bit about what it was like to raise the money, and if the issues in your film were a factor at all in either getting the initial money or whether they were concerned. You know, Hollywood has this idea a lot of times that there's certain things you can't have in a movie because maybe it'll turn off audiences or part of the audience. So you all were brave. You all made the films it seems like that you wanted to make, but was it an issue with the fundraising at all?
Yeah, so the film In God I Trust was shot over a year and a half on weekends. And so we wrote the script, I feel like back in 2015, and we started shooting, or maybe even 2014. It was like way before Trump even said he was going to be, going for president. So initially, we're like, okay, well, how are we going to get this money? We have this script. So we ended up just going to family members at first, and we got our first big investment, and we're like, all right, so we got this chunk of money, what can we shoot in these 3 days with this? And we had one actor available, and his name is Bilal, and he's a Grammy Award-winning artist. And it was his first time acting, and he did a phenomenal job. And it just so happens that weekend was the worst snowstorm Vancouver has ever had in 20 years. It was like a blizzard. So we showed up on set, it was like minus 20 degrees, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, and we got through it, and then after everything was shot, we're like, all right, so what do we do next? We gotta raise more money. So then we just go through the script and figure out, all right, these are the locations, what can we shoot for this amount of money at this location? So we'd budget it all out. We're like, all right, well, we need $35,000. Let's go to all our friends. We like hit up some dentists. We hit up some jewelers. Just the works, just friends and family. So by the end, after a year and a half, we had raised we had 17 or 18 investors, and some larger amounts, some smaller amounts. So it was hard, but through the whole process, I edited the whole film. I was able to see like, well, we need a pickup shoot here. Well, why are we gonna add this? And then my car that we used, the guy that we got the picture car from decided to turn it into a 1970s police car. So we're like, oh, that is my hero car, and it's in my entire movie. What do we do? So we had to rewrite the whole third act. And it made it better. It made it a better movie. So you just have to adapt to what happens and comes to you. But we were able to raise all the money just through family and friends and hitting up as many people with emails, and then showing a little show reel of what we've cut and stuff. So it was good that I was the post-production supervisor, editor, first AD, director, producer, writer, and all that. So we were able to do it that way by reducing costs.
Very good.
You know, I've been asked this question at various things for like alumni stuff I've done, and I always said, my answer is always that the three phases of filmmaking are raising the money, making the film, and selling the film. And making the film is the easiest by far. It's finding the money and then selling. Those are usually the hardest steps. But in this case, making this movie was actually a response to not getting funding to a different movie. I had written a movie that had a higher budget, spent about a year of my life. I took off work. Went through all my savings and was really close to getting this other film made. And, the whole process of getting cast attached and financiers and on a larger scale. And then when that didn't happen, I went back to work on a TV show, and I said, okay, well, during my next break, I'm going to make a film no matter what, whether it's for $2 or $1 million or whatever, let me see what I can do. And I just kind of worked backwards. So I knew what day I finished our season of the show. And I was like, okay, well, to start prep that day, I need the money here. And I did what she did. I went to friends and family and friends of friends and friends of family, and had a lookbook that I had made that had a lot of visuals and director's statement, all that. Approached people, and slowly, we had 22 investors. So.
Wow.
A good, nice visual business plan with less wording, that's what works when it comes to like pitching your project.
Yeah, people don't realize how tough it is, and that you really have to reach out to everybody you know.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing I've ever done.
Oh, it's horrible. Horrible.
No, I'm serious. It was the most painful. Like, I sat down. I was like, all right, going to send that first email. Oh my God, I can't do this.
And do you feel pressure to make sure that it makes money then because you know all these people?
Yeah, you feel pressure to, you want to do right by your investors.
Yeah.
But, the nice thing about doing it this way is you do have creative control over your film, so at least you're kind of doing it on your own terms.
Right.
The movie I directed before this, we had 6 times the budget, but I didn't write it. So it's like, this was a much more personal thing where it was my voice and I could make the film I wanted. And, like she said, I do think having constraints sometimes actually really helps the creative process.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you guys?
Well, when I had written a draft of the script, I took it to a friend of mine who's a producer, and he liked the script and liked the concept, and I was like, great, so maybe we can get some producers involved to get money in. And then I told him that I wanted to act in it while I was pregnant, and that we would actually shoot the film while I was pregnant. He's like, no, like no one is gonna. It's way too risky, which is true. I mean, there were so many. Pregnancy is a complex thing, and knock on, this is not wood, but knock on the wood. It was fine, and we were able to shoot throughout the whole pregnancy up until the start of my 9th month. But it was potentially a complicated thing, so it wasn't something that we could really get financed in a traditional way. It's funny. I mean, we had a lot of people who worked on the film for free, so I feel like we also shot on weekends. We used our house as the set. We have a set that's in Long Island that a friend of ours let us use his house. Shacho's brother is a pastry chef, so we got the hookup for a lot of our food, and he did cooking for us for catering and things like that. So I feel like we were really able to keep the costs at a minimum.
That's great.
And that's really the way that we were able to get the film made. Also, I took a job that I didn't really want. I mean, like, it wasn't a bad job, but I was like, this is kind of a money job, and I'm going to take it because it's going to help with getting the film made. Yeah.
Yeah, it's our first official feature fiction film that we direct. So that's where you can ask the favors. I think in the first one you can ask the favors, and I'm in the Brooklyn College film alumni on my undergrad and Nitzan too, and I did MFA in City College, which in directing. So I knew a lot of people that knows what to do, and after you go to college, you know who knows what to do and who you like that knows what to do, and we geared all of them. We were like, I think a core of 10 people in the crew, and Nitzan and 2 8-year-olds and their moms. That was the major cast and crew, and we filmed it in our apartment and only on weekends. And everybody got like a $100 a day deferred if at some point we will get, which is really, really low, but it was like a work of love. And there's like two nice stories out of it. We filmed until she was 8 months and 2 weeks, and 1 week into the pregnancy. And then when she entered 9 months, I remember we put a camera in our room and we sat in front of it and we made our Kickstarter film that never came out, but we said, and we had to like, we're about to bring 2 babies and we need your help. And I decided, I think it was me, I couldn't ask I just couldn't do that. I mean, they teach you, don't use your money and use others people's money, but it's a little hard to use your others people's money when it's your like friends and family. And so that's one story. The other story is that to our baby naming party, all the people from the film came. So they didn't see a frame from the film, and they didn't even know they will have to wait for like 3 or 4 years. But it was a filmmaking party. We never thought we have so many friends, and then we understood we made a movie with them, so we have to invite them.
Yeah. I feel like our Kickstarter was getting our crew, who all were just part of the whole baby making experience, and that was they were the funding for the film, and that they came and they did the work for us.
Well, all your films are very different in terms of the look of the movie, and you shot them in all different places. And I know not everyone here has seen the movies yet, but can you give everybody just a little sense of what was the most challenging aspect about filming your movie? Once you got the money, like what was the toughest thing about shooting your movie?
Well, technically, I would have to say trying to match locations. So, like I was saying, the first week was a blizzard storm, and then when we went for our second shoot, the location scouting, we went about an hour and a half outside of Vancouver, and there's lots of snow. And then the week that we went to go shoot, all the snow was gone. We're like, oh my God, what are we going to do here? We're like, all right, well, we're just going to shoot it. And so what we did also, we had most of the movie was shot in a car. And my actor is actually sitting right over there in a Nike hat. He's our main actor there. Mark Sr. And so I was most of the time in all the scenes, him in a car, I was laying down in the back seat. And what we did was we rigged an SUV. I think we broke so many laws with this like metal plate thing. And then so we literally just, the SUV would pull the car and we would go down highways and stuff, or when we'd be on radios like, all right, is traffic coming? Like, all right, go, go, go. All right, just go, roll it, Mark. All right, again. So there's a lot of like improv that way, but once we got into post-production, the different locations and matching was kind of a nightmare. So I had to, at some point, add snow in visual effects and then reduce snow visual effects. And then we had to do a reshoot just because it was just so ridiculous. And then just creating kind of some time transitions. So that was, the editing process was really difficult because of the amount of time between and so many outdoor locations.
I think our biggest challenge was just time. You know, we did it as primarily as a block. We shot it during my hiatus, so we kind of knew when I had to go. I had to go back to start season 2 of the show that I was working on. So I finished on like a Thursday, and we started prep on Friday, and we shot 22 days, I think, which is a decent schedule. But you know, it's never enough time, and as much time as you have, you kind of fill to use it. In our case, a lot of the scenes are with 3 or 4 actors, so that becomes a bit of a challenge with coverage, and just, you know, it's a lot easier with 2 people scenes or 3 people scenes, but then you have 4, and we had some with 5, and it's like, then just getting enough to cover it is always a challenge. So yeah, it was really just a time and resources kind of classic constraints. Right. Yeah.
What would you say was the most challenging?
We worked with 2 8-year-old kids, and the most challenging thing was their mothers. Yeah, we became, the kids were like, you know, you live in New York, it's amazing because people want to be involved in movies. So when we did casting, we got a lot of kids, and some of them were like famous, from like famous films. And I was like, we're going to get them, and then you audition them, and it's not a good fit. So with the kids, we had a really good. They knew everything they needed to know, and.
So the most challenging thing was the final scene with the boys. We were filming on the beach. It was September, so it was already getting cold. We were filming in Long Island. In
Coney Island, actually.
Yeah. And we had to be in the water, and it was supposed to be a nice, calm ocean, is how I wrote it in the script, and it wasn't. And it was, we had to be there like 4 in the morning and started to film at 6 in the morning with the boys. And the water was really, like, there was a really strong undercurrent, and we had to get the boys there, so we had to bring a lifeguard, and we had to tie the boys to the lifeguard, just in case. And it was a really intense moment in the film. If you'll see it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But it was also really intense filming it just because of nature and the ocean and 2 very young boys and their moms. So
no, we had kids in the water, and it was like 6 a.m. and it was, I don't know, 70 degrees, And but the best thing is that she was like 8.5 months, and she was like swimming in the water. So I mean, so they can do it too. And the kids were like warriors. They were like, yeah, and they jumped. But when they came out, they were freezing, and we had space.
We had like space blankets,
heaters, and things like that, and we had to like do that between takes so nobody would freeze. And then when we edited it, we had to like edit between the freezing moments and those moments. But I think it's always, honestly, to me, every scene is challenging. I think that's what keeps us going. Because it's exactly what you said. To me, the actual shooting is the most amazing. It's not, I don't know if it's the easiest, but it's the one I love. I hate the before and I hate the after. But to be there and direct and work, it's like unbelievable. And I think people watch movies, but they should be there with us to see what we go through with the snow, and then to understand that, I don't know, our film is like 80 minutes, and we shot probably almost 1,000 minutes that we had to cut out, and we even make the film. And you know, I direct commercials, and my parents are watching them, and they're like, "That's like 30 seconds. You know? I mean, well, why did you say it was so hard to do it?" I was like, yeah.
Well, you mentioned that people should see what you're doing. To be a director, it's an amazing job. Not everyone can do it. It takes a lot of skill, and you have to know about the equipment. You have to be able to work with actors. There is the financial aspect of it as well, and it seems like many of you played many different parts on your films. But I was wondering if each of you have a philosophy in terms of your role as a director. Because not everyone can do it, like I said, and you all have done it.
What was my philosophy? My number one thing is to never give up, and don't take no for an answer, and don't listen to the people that tell you no, that you can't do it. That, to me, it's like, it just makes me want to prove them wrong and be like, I did it, whatever. Like, that's that's the fire that burns inside when someone says I can't do something. So for me, it's just like hard work and determination and just achieving that goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a two-part answer. I think part of it is very similar to her answer, which is, I think the most important thing is trusting your gut and sticking with your gut. I've had instances, and especially on the first feature and shorts that I've done and whatever, where you get into a situation where just something doesn't feel right, whether it be a costume or the way someone's saying a line or the line itself or the camera angle or whatever it is. And inevitably there's going to be people on set that are saying, no, this is how it should be, because it's a collaboration and people give you their thoughts. And there'll be times when every single person on set says, no, I think you have it right, and you know that you don't have it right. And the times when I've gone along and be like, I mean, everyone on set's saying it's probably, okay, yeah, let's just shoot it from here. Then you get in the editing room and you curse yourself because you get in, you start cutting, you go, I knew it should have been over 2 feet or whatever it is. You get, and so on this film, you know, it was the first one where I feel like I had assimilated this philosophy. And so there were times when I was probably more stubborn than I would have normally been with people, and just said, no, this is how it has to be, period. We won't shoot it until it's like this. And you kind of start to get, I'm pretty laid back, I know, but you start to get the diva director thing where these people get this reputation for being super aggressive or particular, and if you don't handle it right, you can get that way, but there is an element of like, you've got to stick to your gut. And then it related to that, the second part is I feel like you have to know everyone's job. And when I went to USC for grad school, and one of the things I really liked about the program was that they taught us every craft sort of from the ground up. And so when you get on set, you know, there's times when, especially when you're on smaller sets or independent sets, where you might know more about someone's craft than they do. If you have an inexperienced sound guy and you go over and you ask him a question, you have to be able to talk the talk with him. And we had a guy, we actually had a sound person that I did a short that screened here last year, and we had a sound person on set that was very inexperienced that I didn't hire, and I went over to listen to a take, and I said, "What's that static sound?" He said, "Oh, you can just take put a filter on and remove the static afterwards." And I was like, no, that's not a thing. You can't do that. So, and I think if you don't know all those, that's an extreme example, but if you don't know all those elements, then you'll end up with problems when you get to the end of the process.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think similarly in terms of understanding other people's roles, for me, coming from an acting background before and working with directors, especially in film, I feel like in theater, a lot of times theater directors themselves have been involved with the acting side of things. But in film, a lot of times a director is coming from a very visual place or from, the place of having written the script, but less of an understanding of the craft of acting. And so I think for me, directing is really about finding a collaboration with the actors and being able to speak their language, which I feel like since I've been on the other side of that, I'm able to do. And I think that working in this film, when we were on set, Checho was definitely the director because I didn't want to have to think about the big picture when I was acting. But I did feel like I had an understanding of the other actors that I was working with and just able to create a safe environment for them to explore and experiment and, feel real and truthful in the space, which is what you want for your actors to be able to have.
Yeah. I have 3 parts, but it's quick. The first one is I think I teach. I'm like, you should be humble, because we filmmakers we have a lot of ego because we have to. We're crazy just to choose to do that, and then to direct, you have to handle the egos of your entire crew, and it's like hard. So I think you gotta stay humble and remember. With it, on the second part is like the director is the only one who knows what will happen, what's going on. Everybody's doing their parts, but the director is the only one that it's inside, and it's like, how do you communicate the insight to the outside? And like they said, sometimes you cannot. So you have to build the trust that your crew will go with you and say, we think he's wrong, but we believe in him, so he's probably right. And you have to pretend you're right all the time, because you're carrying it. It doesn't really matter. And the third part is like what happens to me a lot, and actually it did happen a lot during our film because my wife was pregnant, and it was like, please remember to let her drink and things like that. But what happened to me is like, you gotta have a point person to cry to, like my mother. Like every film I directed, there was at least one moment I ran to the restroom and I cried to my mom. And it doesn't really matter how old I am. And then and then it's over, and you're carrying the sheep again because that's kind of like what we do.
I'm actually getting the signal that we only have time for one more question. There's so much more I wanted to ask you guys about. But one of the things that I liked about all of your movies is that you have characters who are searching for meaning, searching for the thing that's going to make them happy. And I was wondering if each of you, in the process of making your movies, have you found happiness?
Oh, when I first started this film, I had just met my fiance, who's sitting there recording right there, and we just started dating, and he thought I was completely full of crap. I'm like, she's not gonna make a movie. He did not. He just thought that I was all talk, and then so he actually came on set, and he's like, oh, she's actually making a movie. Like, wow. So for me, sorry, what was the question again? What was
Are you happy?
Happy.
Yeah, or
so I was
finding meaning.
For me, making this movie, it really brought me closer to my fiance, and he was there with me the entire time. You have no idea how many times I cried, thinking like, am I gonna finish this thing? Am I gonna do it? And he was there by my side, and he was there. I was showing him cuts. I'm like, what do you think about this? And so he was able to give me feedback, and coming from someone who had no experience on a film set. It was really cool to get like an outside perspective. So for me, it was awesome to have this journey of directing my first feature film with my future husband, who I'm going to get married in 24 days.
Yay.
So yeah, I mean, I think the whole process is so many ups and downs of being happy and super depressed. I think, when you finish your script and then you get funding, you're happy, and then you miss some cast that you wanted to get and they don't sign on and you're sad, and it kind of goes like this. And then once I get onto set, I'm usually really happy, and I kind of go with all the challenges. I think the low point, and I called a friend during this process, and he kind of consulted me, but he's like, and this is probably different for all filmmakers, but he's like, for me, he was like the lowest point of the process is watching the minute after you finished the editor's cut, and so I had just watched the editor's cut with our editor, and you kind of walk out and you're like, it was all for that? That we just went through all that for that, and it's too long and it's terrible and whatever. And then the editing process similarly goes like this, and especially with a comedy, but I think with anything, by the end you hate your movie. Like by the mix, I was like, I can't watch another frame of this. It's terrible. Why did I make this? And really the enjoyment comes from screening at film festivals or seeing it with a live audience, which is one of the reasons that I love to come to these things, is because it brings it all around. And first time you get to watch your movie and each with a new audience, it's just amazing. And it's so cool that, and thank you guys for having these festivals that program original new content, because, everything's streaming now, but that's such a different experience, especially for a filmmaker, going and seeing your movie with a live crowd. That's for me when you start to feel happy again.
Right.
Yeah, that's funny. I have a friend who recently made his first film. It's like a pilot for a series that he wrote, and he saw his first cut, and he was just like, I was like, don't worry, this is the worst it's gonna get. It can only get better, hopefully. But I think for me, this film was so incredibly personal, and as the title suggests, it's really this meditation on what it means to live and to die, and that really fine line between life and death, and this feeling that you get when you bring life into the world, that you also become so aware of your own mortality. And it's terrifying and beautiful at the same time. And to be able to express all of those kind of feelings and thoughts in this work, and then to share it with people, and to have it resonate with an audience, it feels like taking something out of my being, out of my soul, and bringing it out there, and the fact that it can reach, even if it's two people in the audience who really got it, or it means something to them, that it's not exactly what it means to me, but that it affects them in some way, is mind-blowing to me, that can happen, and is really gratifying.
Yeah. My dream is that film festivals will have will set something that is like basically a chair behind the screen, that we can sit and watch the audience watching our film, because we saw our film many times, but just to see reactions and basically it's a moving image, so see if we moved the audience or not. That's kind of like the highlight, and to me, if an audience comes to see my film and half of them live in the middle and half of them stay and like it, then that's a great film, because you need to create something. And if someone hates your film, that's amazing, because you created hate, which is a big thing. if someone says, if someone says to your film like it was nice, that's kind of like the hardest thing to hear. So that's on that point. And the other thing is, like, to me, honestly, I think this film is very personal for us, but we thought it's a film that women will like more or identify more with it. That's what we thought, because it follows the pregnancy of a single mom. But the experience we get with screening it is that men are affected I would say a little bit more even, and I think I have a reason because we're not pregnant. We pregnant women, they have their own experience. Every pregnancy is different. Every woman is going through something. Men, we stand by them and we don't really understand anything. We think we do. We try to do, some of us more or less, but we don't. And I think, as I told my wife after she delivered our first kid, I do not understand how women do not rule the world with what's happening here. And that's yeah.
Well, I want to thank all of you for sharing your personal stories. And
Thank you.
And if you weren't planning on it, I want to really highly recommend all these movies. I hope everyone gets to see your films at the Stony Brook Film Festival. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.